Okay, good evening, everyone. We'll get started. It's a couple minutes after 7. This is a budget workshop. Just for the record, there is no public comment tonight. The public will have its opportunity to speak when we hold a public hearing. Before we get started, or as we get started, we'd like to have a statement read from the Budget Committee. Mike, would you be so kind as to read that for us?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening. The Budget Committee is made up of 3 volunteers in the community. Jim Fry, who's beside me, Sharon Nakata, and myself, Makai Colucci. Sharon is unable to join us this evening, and the 3 of us, Jim, Sharon, and I, had collaborated on some comments, which I will deliver in a moment. But before giving you those comments, Sharon asked for a couple of specific things to be said. So this is from Sharon. I think it important to note, only as a matter of public record, John Froelich resigned from the committee before the first tentative budget meeting with the committee. I think it also is important to note that 2021 may very well end fiscally sound and refill the fund coffers by the following estimates, as prepared by the comptroller. In the A fund, a $77,000 operating deficit estimated for 2021, with a $2.2 million unassigned fund balance remaining in Fund A. For Fund B, a $17,000 operating surplus with an estimated unassigned fund balance of $1,260,000. And in the DB fund, an operating surplus of $342,000.
Hang on just a second, Mike.
Okay.
I guess we haven't had any audio to the Zoom participants.
Okay.
Something has happened that I don't know what. Ryan, can you give me a hand just for a second here? I'm going to pause the recording just while we try to figure out what is happening here.
Join order.
Well, I'm trying, then it gives me like 5 phone numbers. I have to pick one, I guess. That doesn't usually happen.
Could all of you hear me okay?
Sounds good, Mr. Aracolucci.
Okay. Thank you. What about the folks at home? Give them time to come in?
You might even have to restart the computer because it's not recognizing your microphone.
Okay. Well, just try that. How are we going to tell people that on Zoom? I have to send out a new invitation and everything.
No, it should be the same one if you had it in the join.
Okay.
I would end the meeting, restart the computer, go back through your, go through the portal, you have that email link, you try.
contact you. I mean, I'll take all the help we can get, man. Oh, questions? Oh, there's no questions. There's no questions.
Oh, you really wouldn't know they were saying. Good thing you came in. That's Brenda's machine.
Yeah, that's what we got.
It said town clerk on it, I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know.
Just say.
No? Share screen. May not be fully recorded. One second. Messenger.
Yeah.
All right, we got to put something, people can't hear us though, right? There's no audio?
No, it said the Zoom, I thought it was
The Zoom,
recording.
people on Zoom can't hear us.
I thought it was recording would not have it.
No, it sounds like, okay. So we're going to have to, and start over?
If you have a cell phone, it's gonna have enough battery life, and you wanna call in on that option, or leave it on speaker.
Okay, we can do
But it
that.
might be a little difficult to,
Well,
to
might-
hear everybody.
to hear, yeah.
yeah.
All right, let me try that.
All the way to the left.
Dial one of these numbers. There's no reception in the building.
Welcome to enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, you have entered the meeting as a panelist. Attendees can now hear you speak.
Attendees. Okay.
That's right. So I would just test them and see if it's
Okay. Bart, you want to ask if people can hear us? Wait, hang on, the meeting's paused, hang on a second. Try that.
Can the people on Zoom hear us? Who's on there?
Anthony Licata, Tom Harris, Angela McFarland, Gina.
Yes, they can hear you now.
They can, all right, well, let's try that. Sorry for the delay there, folks. Thanks, Ryan. Hold my battery here, so. All right, let's start again. Go ahead, Mike.
At the risk of repeating things people might have heard, my name is Mike Icolucci. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. The Budget Committee is made up of 3 volunteers from the community, Jim Fry, who's sitting beside me, Sharon Nakata, and myself. Sharon is not able to join us this evening, but she asked that we give a few comments before we get rolling into some collaborative comments that the 3 of us together put together. So this is from Sharon. I think it important to note, only as a matter of public record, John Froelich resigned from the committee before the first tentative budget meeting with the committee. I think it also is important to note that 2021 may very well end fiscally sound and refill the fund coffers by the following estimates as prepared by the comptroller. In the A fund, an operating deficit for 2021 estimated at $77,000 with a an unassigned fund balance of approximately $2.2 million. In the B fund, an operating surplus of $17,000 with an unassigned fund balance of $1.2 million. And in the DB fund, an operating surplus of $342,000 with an unassigned fund balance of approximately $1,600,000. Sharon continues that she would also like to thank the committee and David Bramer for the book he painstakingly prepared for our benefit. And if she may, Sharon wants to suggest in the future to set the book up by general ledger number, the way the budget itself is viewed. So thank you, Sharon, for those comments, and again, sorry you could not join us. For the committee, our task was to review, analyze, and make suggested adjustments to the tentative budget filed on October 1st, 2021 by the town clerk. The committee has been involved in 4 meetings since September 29. Various department heads met with 2 or more of the committee members to present and explain their proposed budgets for 2022. We recognized that the town board would follow our work and make the final decisions, taking into account both structural and political limitations of the tax structure of the town. We believe each department faithfully requested spending that properly reflected town services and met the constraints of the town's financial situation. The comptroller and the supervisor have helped the committee to understand more fully what was requested and how funds might be used, as well as sources of funds that might be available. The comptroller and supervisor have emphasized to the committee that the budget should be the result of a process. That process began with estimates submitted from the department heads and incorporated into the tentative budget, a thorough and deliberate review of the departmental estimates by the budget committee, and now continues with the workshop to be followed by a public hearing, all in preparation for the town board to vote on the budget for 2022 no later than November 20. All of these meetings and supporting documentation have been made available for public inspection. Since 2014, the town has employed 4 different comptrollers. The budget committee is confident that the current comptroller is knowledgeable of budgetary, accounting, and financial reporting requirements and is bringing the town into line with state norms. The major sources of revenue for the town are sales tax distributions from Saratoga County, state aid, franchise fees and departmental fees, and the real property taxes levied by the town. The rate of taxation on real property has varied significantly over the past 12 to 15 years, and the committee recommends that the board look to stabilize the rate at a level that is necessary to appropriately fund town operations. The tentative budget for 2022 showed an increase in total appropriations, that is, expenditures. The major areas of expenditures for the town are personnel services and equipment and capital outlays. The town board will decide on the actual appropriations to be made after hearing from the public when it finalizes the budget. With respect to the tentative budget, we would like to comment on several areas. The increase in total appropriations compared to 2021 includes $300,000 for a fuel item and $130,000 for parkland development. These expenditures will be financed in large part from existing fund balances and will not have any impact on the tax levy, and they represent about 1/3 of the total increase in appropriations compared to 2021. The comptroller inventoried furniture and equipment throughout the departments in the town. Much of that inventory is 15 to 20 years old and is in need of replacement. The tentative budget includes appropriations to replace vehicles, equipment, and office furniture for various departments. From review of the projected fund balances at fiscal year end 2021, the committee suggests appropriating fund balances to acquire those items. The committee also suggested the following specific items: a reduction in line A1990, which is a contingency line, from $115,000 to $45,000. elimination of $10,000 on line A3010.4, which is a contractual line. Reduction from $40,000 to $20,000 on line A7110.2, which is for parks, equipment, and capital. And lastly, a reduction from $30,000 to $10,000 on line B1990.4, which again is a contingency for contractual expense. In 2013, the town board approved a rate of $15 per hour for part-time help, and in 2020, the board discussed raising pay rates from the rate of $15 per hour to the rate included on the town's salary schedule, but did not take action. The tentative budget for 2022 includes increases that are intended to raise those pay rates for the work that employees are doing and to reflect the current circumstances in the job market, which are challenging for employers. In addition, the tentative budget includes various changes in departmental staffing, which will be decided only upon the ultimate vote of the town board. The tentative budget includes an expenditure of $19,000 for a study on job classifications and pay grades. Given that personnel services are a major part of overall expenditures, we feel it is important for both employees and the town to ensure that pay levels are appropriate. We discussed the future of employee benefits for town employees and retirees with an eye on cutting back on future new employee benefits. Our future liability could reach millions of dollars if not changed. The employee handbook should be reviewed and possibly, with board approval in the future, be changed in order to help with future budgets. The committee also discussed the idea of hiring a part-time or full-time engineer to decrease the contractual expense to outside firms. The board should consider this idea as it moves forward. On the revenue side, the county projects that sales tax receipts from Saratoga County in 2021 will exceed the amount budgeted for 2021 by nearly $700,000. That budgeted number for 2021 was a conservative estimate because of the uncertainty regarding COVID. In light of those numbers, the 2022 tentative budget includes projected sales tax receipts greater than the amount budgeted for 2021. That estimate has been updated with information provided by the county treasurer on October 19th. The greater the amount of sales tax receipts, the less is the amount that would need to be raised by the tax authority. Finally, the committee is aware of potentially significant revenue by way of the anticipated sale of property to the Community Emergency Corps at $200,000. This revenue item has not been included in the updated summary of appropriations and revenues because the board has not yet voted to authorize this sale. The committee also has reviewed how to utilize the American Rescue Plan Act funding and is working with the comptroller and supervisor to determine whether resources can be utilized as a financing source to offset the HVAC contract for Town Hall, which was entered into on September 22, 2021, totaling $122,000. Additionally, we are evaluating the ability to use the ARP funds to procure a street sweeper at an estimate of $300,000 in the future, and we will continue to evaluate all ideas, including the rental of a street sweeper. The town currently has legally created reserve funds and balances accumulated from prior year's operations and is operating under a system of financial management. While those resources provide a source of funds that can be used to address expenditures, it is important to retain some level of funding to address any unanticipated needs. The town board will need to address how to best use restricted funds and accumulated resources which are held on behalf of the residents of the town. Again, any plan with respect to the use of cash reserves needs to tie into the multi-year spending plan and to the goal of stabilizing the tax rate on real property. Thank you, and Jim would like to add a few comments.
I apologize up front that the audience may have the papers that I'm looking at, but the audience on Zoom will not have the papers that I'm looking at. And it's going to be a comparison, a summary of appropriations and revenues for the fiscal year 2022. I assume that they'll be on the town board tomorrow. What I want to do then is to show what was the impact of the committee's work, along with the budget officer and the comptroller. What I'm going to do is compare the tentative on 1 October to what we're presenting tonight. The board members and the audience will see those 2 pages. The first one will be the newest one that we're proposing tonight. The second one is the one that was published early October. I want to note that as we go down each line, as we compare them, you'll see that the appropriations and budgetary provisions for other uses total for the town will go from 7 million now down to 6.5 million. Local revenue, that was an estimate at 1.4 million, will now be 1.1 million. Non-property tax distributions by county was 3.5 million and now is 3.6 million. The appropriated fund balance and reserve, which was really not applied yet on the tentative board, the tentative budget, until after our committee met, went from 572,650 to now 903,249. Thus, the balance to be raised by real property taxes on the original tentative budget was 1,546,920. We are proposing a tax levy now of 753,622. Let me repeat that. We went from 1.5 down to 753,000. What impact did that have after the budget committee went through its process? You'll notice towards the bottom of the page that in the early October tentative budget, taxes would be raised by 89.5%. We're proposing from the committee that now taxes would decline by 9%. One was an increase of 89%. We all heard about that number. The budget committee has come up with minus 9%. The board is now has the ability to accept or not accept our recommendations, and we've done our job, I think. We thank everybody in the town, and especially the department heads that did everything and put everything together, comptroller, the budget officer. Thank you very much.
I want to thank the budget committee for their hard work. I think we're at a place where most of us can agree. We can go from here as a board and make our decisions.
Can I ask a quick question to the budget committee? I don't know if they can you hear me out there?
Yes, sir.
How did we go from 1.5 to 700,000 when we only reduced the appropriations by 123,000?
Part of that is the surplus sales tax that we're going to receive this year. We're budgeted to receive over about $600,000 in surplus sales tax that we hadn't budgeted for. We used the county clerk's estimate for last year at 3.1, and this year he's predicting that the town will get about 3.7, 3.8. So we have surplus. We can use that surplus to keep taxes down and get some projects done.
John, that would be picked up on non-property tax distribution by the county, which on the tentative in early October was 55,000, and now it is 645,567, and that's the difference, and that's why it would come down that much for how much taxes are needed in the town.
I understand all that. But basically, we're just spending our surplus. We're not really making any cuts other than 123,000. And the rest we can fund out of unallocated funds, right?
That's correct.
And just as a clarification, this is a town board budget hearing, or budget workshop, which the attorney or the state controller requires of us. So it's up to us now to go through the budget and figure out what we want to do, correct?
That's correct. Any other board member have any comments before we get started? Okay, let's start. Page 3, town board.
Correct. Basically, what I did is I went down through the budget and I marked everything that was what I would consider a substantial increase from last year. And the first is A1010, the $10,000. When last year we appropriated nothing. Can we explain that?
Go ahead. You're on.
So that represents 60, I believe 68 chairs at $200, the state contract pricing for residents to sit in when they attend board meetings.
And can we tell me, Dave, I know you did an inventory, what was the condition of the chairs we have now?
Poor, very poor.
What was poor about it? I haven't seen any broken chairs.
I guess my thought on that is, John, we're spending a lot of money to get into a new building. Do we really want to go in there with chairs that are, old and beat up?
Well, I guess, and I, for the life of me, was looking for the furniture inventory that was done, because the furniture inventory that I saw was just about 6 lines long. It said,
Correct.
we bought this piece of furniture in 2001, we bought this piece, I didn't see any counts in there,
Exactly.
and I didn't see any conditions in there. Just because something's 20 years old doesn't mean it needs to be replaced. And I guess it probably...
So you're suggesting we don't buy new chairs for the boardroom?
Well, what I'm suggesting is we had, I believe, and the figures go widely up and down, but basically in this budget we have pretty close, I would say, to $100,000 worth of furniture budget.
That's correct. I think it's about $96,000 or $97,000.
In my
And
estimate,
that's so that the entire town hall gets new furniture.
correct, but my estimation on what would be a good plan for the town would be to phase in this furniture over a series of years and not replace everything all at once. Because what happens, can I finish my statement?
Go ahead, sorry.
What happens at the end of 20 years now, we're going to be looking to spend 100,000 plus because all this furniture will come due at the same time. Where if you phase it out over a certain number of years, your budget doesn't take that big a hit because you're spending maybe 20,000 a year to replace furniture each year. I realize that new furniture is nice for everybody, but I think we have to look at that whole new furniture pack. I'm not in favor of spending $100,000 for furniture, not at all.
How much would you like to spend?
Well, I would like us to take it down to something that, if we got broken furniture, I'm all for replacing that. If we got worn out furniture, I'm all for replacing that. But we don't even have that inventory in front of us to tell us that.
Can I say something now? If you look at this handout,
Correct.
equipment and capital outlay decisions, office furniture,
Yeah,
it's down to 59,000
Well,
recommendations.
but
So
that's
maybe
not
we should-
true,
Maybe
Barb.
we should start on
Yes.
this.
Just to clarify, 60,000 is the impact on the general fund, with $19,000 would be coming out of the general part of town, or townwide, I'm sorry, town outside village fund. And, you know, so my thoughts with this were to appropriate, you know, a small amount of fund balance to, you know, for this acquisition. Basically has no taxpayer impact. It's a one-time expenditure. Appropriations within those equipment lines will, you know, revert back to zero in 2023 when we go through this process again.
And just as a clarification, so we understand where my number came from, you had 59, roughly 60,000, you had another 19,000 in the B fund, but you also had $19,000 worth of furniture, which was offset by the court grant. So that comes up to pretty close to 90-some-odd thousand dollars worth of furniture.
So that is true. I guess the 60 plus the 19 is 80. You know, but then we're getting basically, in order for us to be able to acquire the filing system, primarily for the court system, we actually have to expend, you know, an amount to be reimbursed through the Justice Court Assistance Program. So that was some forward thinking by our justices, submitting to the Justice Court Assistance Program for the grant funding. You'll see that in the revenue, as a revenue item in the general fund budget on page
3.
8. It's $20,000, A 3021 state aid court facilities.
Correct, but that's reimbursed from the state.
Correct.
We don't have to expend our money first because
We do.
when I talk to the justice, well, we have to expend it once we get the okay for the grant. Because he'll have the okay for the grant very quickly now. I know that they have the paperwork into Albany and they're just waiting on the okay.
That is correct, but if we don't buy the furniture, then we can't receive the revenue to offset the cost of the furniture. And there's this, it's obviously, it's fairly significant, but what that primarily is a high-density filing system, you know, to be included in a room. They have limited space in the court, and it does look to, you know, it does look as if it's a good storage solution for them.
I'm not disagreeing with that solution because that's paid for itself. We're not upping our budget in order to pay for that system. My question is, I would like us to spend $20,000 over the next 5 years to cover this furniture, and then we can reduce that cost by whatever, we're looking at 80,000, so if we looked at it over the next 5 years, we could even bring that down to 15,000 a year to step this out, and I think that would be make more sense. Just because we got big surpluses doesn't mean we ought to spend it. That's been the problem with our town boards right from the get-go. Because every time we got a surplus, we thought we should cut taxes. And that's why we're in the problem we have with the town garage. We're in the problem we have with every building we have in this town because we never planned on how to replace this stuff. And this budget certainly doesn't have that plan in it either. So I'm looking at spending $15,000 for furniture.
Just to be the devil's advocate on that, and that under the highway department, their machinery line, I mean, I see a 1993 Case tractor replacement for $80,000, which is the same amount as the equipment, or sorry, the office furniture in aggregate. I mean, is there an opportunity to reduce that, you know, that 80,000 and utilize some of those resources for the acquisition of office furniture and, you know, maybe acquire that tractor in 2023?
Well, I guess, right now, we're not talking about highway, because we gotta go through a lot of other stuff.
Okay.
That we can discuss during highway. What I am saying right now is I'd like to spend 15,000. Reduce that number to 15,000 and phase this in over 5 years.
Anyone else?
Where do you suggest we're gonna spend the 15?
Well,
Where are we gonna spend the 15? Where's it gonna go?
we know we have some broken furniture.
Oh, absolutely, we know we have some broken furniture. That's something I'd like to know, is how much broken furniture do we have, or water damaged furniture?
That, if we had the proper inventory, we'd know that part.
Well, I think we all know the confidential secretary desk has a block on one leg and a brick on the other to level it off.
Yes.
But some of that, the other, I don't wanna say cheaper pieces, but pieces that were all hooked together, I know some of those are broken. I've seen it when they were stacked up in the clerk's office.
Correct. I
So
don't,
where do you go? I mean, what if we go over that 15?
well, we don't necessarily have to go over 15.
Well-
Replace what you can this year.
You gotta replace the broken things.
That's
I don't
correct,
think some of those
I'm saying.
things that can even be salvaged.
Well, if I look at the clerk's office furniture, which was for 2 desks, and I don't know exactly, I wish Dave, you would have printed out the quote from Staples so we could see exactly what each department was
It's
getting.
It's in the
binder.
The whole thing, but split up.
Yep,
Yep.
Split it by department.
Yeah,
split up by
I
department.
mean,
Per
it's
account.
so much easier to have just that quote sitting in front of us instead of trying to.
I can provide the entire quote.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, Barb, one desk out of that can't be $3,000.
I don't know what to do. I don't know what's broken and what's not. I don't think, 15,000 is pretty lean.
I don't think so. That's just me.
15,000 wouldn't get highway or building their new furniture for the year. That's $20,000 from each department.
Correct. But we don't, highway, I don't think requested any new furniture this year in their budget that I saw.
Their furniture actually hits the EA fund. It's A5010.2. I would, you know, and it's in this equipment and capital outlay decisions. Again, I mean, these are just, this was a quote based on discussions that all of the departments had with our representative. You know, nothing is set in stone. It's all a state contract pricing. It's supposedly a high-quality furniture package. It includes professional installation, delivery. So the highway department's furniture request is included in the general fund.
So a question, if we're using state contract pricing, we don't receive any additional discount if we purchase all of this at once? If we were to break this up over multiple years or a handful of years, unless the costs go up year over year?
So that's what happens. I mean, costs just increase. I mean, it's inflation. Everything goes up, and that's what you jeopardize when you know, I guess I'm certainly not opposed to, you know, acquiring equipment and, you know, in that fashion. I think that's the way that you ideally would like to acquire, you know, capital pieces of equipment. You want to plan and allocate resources, you know, over a few-year period, and, you know, let you pull the trigger when you acquire the resources that you need to purchase that piece of equipment. The impact this has no tax impact based on how fiscally healthy our general fund is. expense, and I just feel that it does, make sense to, if we're moving into a building, it's going to be entirely renovated. There was obviously hazardous material, and allergens in the old, office building. So I'm assuming that, it just makes sense to, if you were to walk through town hall, there's not a piece of furniture that I would bring and, use in my house. So that's kind of where I think this proposition makes sense. Ultimately, the decision is yours.
I'm in favor of this purchase. I'll just go on record and say that. I think moving into the building with new floors, new walls, new paint, new ceiling, doesn't make much sense to bring in a lot of the stuff that's old and decrepit.
How about moldy?
There may even be moldy furniture, who knows?
But those are all hardscape, or hard finishes that can be cleaned and sanitized. So that's a pretty poor excuse. Well, it's going to be a long night if we don't move along. So.
Well, I'm in favor of the purchase. John, you're not? The other board members? I'm in favor of a one-time purchase, let me put it to you that way.
So we're saying this doesn't impact the tax base, but it does mean that we would have less in reserves in the event we needed them down the road, or is this specifically allocated?
Between the surplus sales tax that we're expected to receive from the county and the appropriated fund balances that were taken out, there's no expense to the taxpayers.
We're sitting at about $2.1 million, and this is a $60,000. We would utilize $60,000 of that $2.1 million unassigned fund balance for the acquisition within the A fund. Within the B fund, they have just over $1 million in unrestricted fund balance. So we would utilize $20,000 from the $1 million to acquire the furniture on behalf of the building department.
Personally, I'd rather be more conservative, just from the standpoint where we're still trying to finish this town hall project, which we didn't foresee coming. We don't know that there won't be another scenario like that in the next year or two. I'm not saying limit it to $15,000 a year, but I'd like to see a phased approach.
2 years?
If it means we have $30,000 available on hand for something else unintended. Yeah.
Just trying to compromise a little bit. I mean, we gotta, John, like John said, we gotta move on here.
I mean, at minimum, we have to go with the court.
The court's a wash,
Towards the water, they'll be getting.
so there's no expense to going to the court.
I think you're gonna, once we start yanking this stuff out, I think you're gonna find more than 15,000 that's gonna have to be replaced, that's the issue.
Let's do 20. Do 20.
I just said 30, can we go for 25?
25. What do we have?
What do you think, people?
25.
25 is fine. Let's figure out which ones, we're gonna put everybody in a hat or just go down the list.
No, I think you're gonna have to look at what's gotta be replaced. That's all that's been moved 3 times and now it's sitting in the trailer. I just. Right?
So if we want to move down to the justice, the 23, 780, 758, that includes that, all that file system day?
Well, that appropriation was actually reduced in the committee's proposal by $4,000 because we weren't going to replace any of the chairs for for the public within the justice court. So it's about 19,000. Yes, that doesn't include the system.
But it doesn't include the,
19,358.
yeah, that was the filing system, but it doesn't include the modifications to the walls and the closet where the filing system's going, which was about $4,000.
And to that, I guess to that point, you would, I guess I would need to see what the justices have submitted, if they've received quotations from local contractors, so that I can, include a proper revenue estimate or, a revenue estimate that offsets the anticipated costs.
I think that's in their application too.
Yeah, they had to get quotes on
Yep.
that, because they had to be in their application for the grant.
But the 19,358, that's a filing system. I believe it's 1 justice desk and then 3 workstations for the justice clerks.
Well, we took out the 3 workstations.
No, the workstations are included in this amount. We took out the chairs.
But we just said we were gonna spend $25,000 for furniture. So, somebody's gonna have to get something back, I just wanna make sure we included the 4,000 so they, once they get the file system, they can fit it into where it's got to go.
Okay.
So that's, well, first of all, the 19,358 is a wash, no matter what's included in that. So you're looking to add $4,000 to the court,
And that's all part of that 30,000 anyway.
right, which would come back anyway.
And it's not exactly 30, they match what we expend.
Right,
Yeah,
So we expend.
it's up to 30,000.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
so the 19,300 and about $4,000 to $5,000 for repairs puts it at about $23,000 to $24,000, which would be a wash when they get reimbursed.
So we're just gonna add the 4,000 to 23?
No, I guess actually we leave the estimate right where it is. Because we took 4,000 out for chairs and we're adding
Oh.
4,000 back in for.
In other words, the 23 didn't reflect the 4,000.
It's one, right, it doesn't reflect any amounts for construction. Whatever it is that they're doing within that room right now. Framing, sheet rock, taping, painting, probably, 4,000 seems like a good amount for a small, framing, sheet rock, smaller room.
The supervisor's 6, that was for furniture.
And almost every single .2.
That's, that's for
That's all for,
a new
Yeah,
desk,
that's what I'm
a
saying.
new table and chairs for when we have people in the office. And I believe there was a credenza behind the desk, so, yeah. That included a table and 4 chairs? I think it was 4 chairs.
I believe that's right. The only other item that is capital in nature that will be added throughout these .2s is $1,000 for a universal printing, basically a universal printing solution that's based on a quote of state contract pricing for basically to mirror the printing unit that the Secretary of the Highway Superintendent recently purchased. Obviously, this is a little high, but what that includes is a tray for 8x14 printing and a service agreement for 200 or so. So when you see 65, 63 within the supervisor's line, it's 5,500 for office furniture, 1,000 for the printing solution.
Okay.
Which is, in the printing solution, the universal printing solution is a attempt to more or less save taxpayer resources by lowering.
Are these all the same printer?
Yes.
I was a little confused when I looked at what you had sent us.
Every single department has a different printing device. I,
Use the same stuff?
no, all of every single, there's not a single, to my knowledge, I don't believe that there's a single device that uses the same ink cartridges, so, you know, this would allow for us to maybe procure, toner in bulk, you know, and do that on you know, infrequent basis, maybe on a quarterly basis. I'm not sure how many times Brenda, you know, has to order ink, but I know that she does that on behalf of our department, at least on a bi-monthly basis, which takes her, you know, she spends resources to do that, and I just think that it's a universal printing solution, regardless of what the brand is, as long as they're all, you know, the same. I think would be for the benefit of the town. So.
The personnel positions, we should discuss those in executive session?
Oh, fine. So part of the budget, we're gonna have
It's part of the
it. I
budget.
really thought we should start on this sheet that the committee recommended looking at.
It's titled Personnel Service Decisions, so basically the decisions that the board would make, you know, from here on out can only further reduce the tax levy. Unless the board adds to the budget, which is certainly viable. I want to stress that the board is you know, it's a document that can, you know, can increase, appropriations can decrease. It's very fluid at this junction in time.
I guess I have a question.
Yep.
You're looking at 19,000 for an evaluation of positions through an outside company,
Yes.
okay? Should we be changing all these pay rates until we have that? Because how do we know we're
That-
changing a pay rate and they make it in lower? What do we do then?
If you, so my opinion is,
Let's get the job done immediately.
yeah, I mean, so I think there's another item that needs to be moved along. You know, once that policy document is updated and you know, approved by the board, then I think that, you know, the first call after that decision is made would be to this third-party vendor to put together a contract and, you know, move forward with this. You know, it's like an audit. It'll take a few months, but, you know, based on the conversations that we've had, it sounds like they would give us everything that we would need, you know, in order to phase in the, you know, any rate adjustments, you know, really at any point in time. I would like to add, I was thought that.
I think we talked about this before, and the trouble that we were having, or perceived that we were having, was getting people to apply for positions when the pay was rather incredibly low at $15 and $15 an hour.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree that 15 is low. But
We had talked about this, and I thought the decision we had relatively agreed on was to move these part-time positions up to full-time pay without the benefits. They're doing full-time work.
That's what we're saying. Okay, and I understand that. But what is this evaluation going to come to? That's my question.
Well, I guess I got several questions on that. Why aren't we utilizing the county? Because they already have pay rates, schedules, and civil service does, certainly, which doesn't cost us anything. And what happens when we hire this company and they come back and all the numbers are higher? Do we raise them all up?
But how do they make a comparison? Are they making a comparison might be done, so.
It's a very reputable company. I've seen their work actually all over the capital region, you know, or throughout the region, you know, that I was assigned from, you know, from an audit standpoint. You know, say they do increase the, you know, the rate of pay for a job classification or a position, ultimately it's going to be the board's, you know, decision to set that rate. But I do think that a proposition like this could be to the benefit of the organization, to the workforce, to, you know, being able to require, you know, prospective employees, you know, by defining the rate of pay, you know, and establishing all of the positions that would be employed, I think could make you know, make our lives much, you know, much simpler. I think it would create a less tense or, you know, workspace. And then from my standpoint, from a budgetary standpoint, it would be as simple as just plucking a figure off of the table and utilizing that figure and multiplying it against the number of hours that you know, that employees are part of work, and then that would define their salary. And then to your earliest point, John, I mean, that the rate of pay did increase. Our funds are all fiscally healthy enough to bear, you know, whatever increases. I think that you know we may even make.
I personally don't see the expense, but again, only one of four.
You don't see what?
The expense of hiring this person, I think we can get this work.
I think we've had more problems with these pay rates and employee positions, and I think we have to kind of stabilize this, whether it be through a company or through the county.
I look at it, it's kind of like you're just hiring like an accountant or a lawyer or an engineer. It's a human resource professional. You know,
We don't have here.
right, exactly.
That's where we've run into a lot of problems.
You know, they will help to, you know, integrate and
I think it would help define our positions, and it would let the employees know where they stand relative to other positions or other towns or other cities. They make this, we make that. We have a town that's this size, somebody else's town is a different size. It's sometimes we're comparing apples and oranges. This would get us a chance to at least look at the same apples. They might be Macintosh or Cortland's, but at least they're apples. I think for $20,000, it's a worthwhile expense. That's my take on it.
I know what you're doing here, but you look at some of these percentages, they're kind of scary.
Are we talking about our part-time people that are going on?
Yes, yeah, I'm looking,
I had some thoughts on that.
you know, we have one here at 76%. That's scary when you see that number.
Well,
Yeah, but that's a man who's making $15.65 an hour right now.
I know that, but.
do we have any idea, and I think I worked it out, Dave, the difference between paying what our positions are now? We have approximately 14 or 15 part-time positions that we're paying right now, give or take. And I multiplied their hours and what we're actually paying these people versus what we would pay by what was proposed in our budget. And it cost us about $62,000.
I don't think we have that many part-time employees,
I
John.
think we have 4 part-time employees.
I'm thinking about a half a dozen off the top of my head.
You got 2 dog control positions.
Well, we haven't decided on
We
that
haven't
one yet,
decided what
right?
we're gonna do with that,
Well, but we gotta fund something in the budget.
Okay,
We got one building department clerk, you got a fire inspector, you got a code enforcement officer, you got a part-time person with tax collection, you got a part-time data collector position in the assessor's office, you have 2 court clerks, which we changed to full-time.
Full-time, right.
You have 1 controller, or clerk typist, that would be Dave's assistant, and you have Bell. And their hours, and some of these hours vary.
He's employed on, he's employed kind of like I am, it's like an appointment.
Who's that?
The bailiff.
Do they all-
Yeah, he's
He's a
paid
whole
by
separate-
salary, it was a little
It's like
difficult.
the same.
He's a whole
with-
separate issue.
I know, and he's only 520 hours a year too, so. But I guess my thought was that I think our part-time people were looking to come up to what they would think was a fair wage. And when we looked at it, we included all the steps and everything, correct?
No,
No.
this puts them at the base.
I probably had looked at it and said, okay, let's bring everybody up to the base. In other words, if we have a dog controller position, right now paying $15.30, and you went up to $19.30, I think.
I think
right now the full-time position is like 20 and change,
that,
21.
That's for animal control.
69, I think.
Two different classifications.
I don't think we even have, do we even have a job class for dog control?
I don't know, I'm just going by what
So
you're
that's,
looking at.
I slotted them in where I thought it would make sense, and that's where I think the proposal helps to define the positions that we actually have. We employ people for which we've never established a position, so since the position was never established, they don't align with the salary schedule, so that's where we kind of, unfortunately, we need to come up with like an arbitrary, are you a grade 2, are you a grade 3, are you a grade 4?
Well, my thought is whatever the full-time position is paying now, to start, that's where the part-time, because they're doing the same job.
Exactly.
Right, that's what we talked about before, starting at the base level.
That's what's reflected in the tentative. Like for instance, with, we have a part-time, we have an assistant building inspector who's employed on a part-time basis. And so the grade for that position is a grade 8. And by putting him at the grade 8, step 0, it's, you go from $15 to like $30. And that's the
Grade 8 would be around $27. Would be around $27.
actually, to that, I pulled his personnel file, and he's most certainly and definitely an assistant building inspector.
Billy, you want to come up? I want to talk to the department head.
That's what a workshop's for, talk to department heads.
Yes. When we look at,
Use your microphone, please.
I'm sorry. When we're looking at like the assistant building inspector, is he more an assistant building inspector or a fire inspector?
There's two classifications for a BCI and a CEO. Fred is a BCI. He is able to do building safety inspections, but not certain things in the building, like Mark DeLong and I are official CEOs, stay certified to do all building inspections, fire inspections.
So you gotta get closer.
Fred is on the fire safety inspection side, so there is less stringent certification needed, but in all reality, he can do some building safety inspections for us if need be.
And as far as Sean, he's a code enforcer, right?
Sean is a town code enforcement officer. He has no state certification, so he is just at the way that the position was wrote at the supervisor's discretion. He is an employee of the supervisor, which was then handed over to the building department.
Are they probably not compatible, the two of them, as far as their experience and what they?
They both bring immense, I guess, they both have law enforcement backgrounds, which is a big help in the field. Fire safety inspections, Fred goes out to the field, does fire safety inspections. With violations, he can write tickets, send people to court. He has to go to court, oversee that, and follow up the tickets and remedy the situations. Sean is, again, he has an extensive law enforcement background of over 30 years, which his knowledge and the way that he talks to people and handles people, he's very professional. And for $15 an hour, I personally, at that rate, I don't know how they've stayed on so long. We've been very lucky and very fortunate to have two former law enforcement officers that have done a great job. And I can't say enough about both of them, and actually the whole staff in the building department. We work well together and get a lot accomplished. And I think just from the revenue that we bring in and the safety that we bring to the town, it's a plus, it's a win-win all around.
I'm not objecting to moving these people up.
To what we have
What
here?
level should they be
Well,
at?
that's what I'm trying to get at.
Bill just said that,
Use your microphone, Barb.
no,
Yeah, stay close.
all right, you just said that Fred cannot do the jobs, do the things that you and Mark are
He
about.
cannot do the building safety inspections, but he does, he does the building safety inspections. He can't do some of the structural inspections and things like that. It's a
Okay,
different
So
classification.
does that mean bringing him up to building inspector?
If you look at the county pay scale for a position of fire marshal, which Fred has, it's around between $22 and $26 an hour. That's what they're getting if you go to the civil service sheets, which I believe the supervisor has and the comptroller has. It goes by county, it goes by, township, which they pay. The scale is between $22 and $26 an hour. And the same for enforcement is a little lighter, but it's between, I believe, between $21 and $24 an hour. In that range is what the average of different communities, such our size, such as Moreau, Half Moon, Clifton Park. Clifton Park is on the upper end of the scale, but the other ones we're the fourth largest township in the county, and those are three of the other ones that we're comparable with, and Malta as well. You can look at the civil service sheets for Malta, Moreau, Half Moon, Clifton Park, and in that range you can come up with an average. And
That's what I'm saying, where do we come up, what number do we come up?
we're at $15 an hour.
I know, and it's gotta go up, but where do we go to?
Well, there again,
That's the
that's why I
question.
think going to the county and getting some of their list would be an immense help in this.
Well, you have that,
Sorry.
right? You have the county.
So this is where I think it's
And I don't mean
a
to
large
bring in
benefit. to-
personnel,
No.
each person, I'm just trying to talk positions.
Yes.
So this again is going to be, I apologize.
We're all right.
So this is going to be another, this is going to be something that could be of immense help for you guys as elected officials to, to decide what the proper rate of pay is for those types of positions, and that information could, would be conveyed to you through a report. If you elected to move forward with that proposal. Otherwise, I guess the problem that we might find ourselves in is that if we're going to use the county average for one position, then, doesn't that mean that we're going to have to use the county average for all positions, and then, our personnel services expenses will be all over the, they will be all over the place.
Just as a department head, I do agree with some sort of study for the town to come up with a fair pay scale operation, not only for my department, for all the departments, and clarify the job positions upon arrival. Have some sort of job or some sort of something issued saying, this is the person's position, this is the starting pay, and these positions, I think the rate that we came up with that Dave, that we've implemented for the salaries is 76% increase. The reason why it's 76% increase because he has not had only 2% raises for the last 5 years he's been here, so he's missed out. He's missed out on those step increases plus the base salary that he's had. So that's why it's an enormous pay increase for that position. But again, you're getting professional services and you get what you pay for, and we're lucky to have those two people. But I am all for, as like the board has said, some sort of analysis so we can come up with a base salary for the people and make it fair for not only us as employees, but people that the town hires in the future.
It's definitely gotta go up from $15. There's no, you know,
Well, I guess,
no arguing about that.
yeah, I don't think we're in disagreement with that.
No, absolutely not.
So we're in agreement that we're gonna
How we're
raise
gonna
it.
do it, that's the thing.
Yeah,
Do it
if we
fairly,
get the-
like Bill said.
If we get some of the county sheets and the town sheets and start looking at those, because we can't get the study done before the budget's got to be done.
No, absolutely, no, we can't.
You know, even if we voted tomorrow to do it, we don't get it done. At least it'll give us some kind of reference.
So the thoughts that I've had regarding that would be maybe whatever it be, the flat increase for all impacted employees. You know, with like the condition that, or maybe the expectation that, you know, there'd be an evaluation and, you know, those pay rates be adjusted from, you know, where you guys plan to set them for 23 to what the appropriate rate of pay is, you know, as determined by the third party human resource professional. So maybe you just increase everyone to $20 you know, an hour if based on the evaluation that's completed. They, you know, certain employees that based on the, you know, the responsibilities of those positions, you know, maybe that, you know, we go from 20 to wherever, you know, the amount is determined to be appropriate. It's a step, but I believe it's to be a step in the right direction.
What if we were to budget the full amount of the proposed level they're gonna be at? Well, the board says come January 1st, all part-time employees are paid $20 an hour pending the results of this HR survey or our county survey, whatever the board decides to do. But we could put in the budget that we will budget for people going up to grade 7 or 8 or 6 or whatever they are. We can budget that amount, but January 1st, the part-time pay goes up to $20 an hour. Even for people making $15.35, that's still a $5 an hour raise. They won't be completely dissatisfied with $5 an hour, with the potential for, you know, further earnings.
That is a great point that Benny just made. The budget, it doesn't set the rate of pay. It's just you're just setting the limit of appropriations. So if, you know, there is no need for it to be like a 1-to-1, like, you know, personnel service costs for this employee isn't budget, don't necessarily need to match or correspond identically to the personnel, to the amount that you plan to pay them, for the salary schedule that is adopted at the organizational meeting.
What do you think?
I don't have.
You can live with that?
Get the study done and then adjust them accordingly, but we have to budget for the correct, or whatever, right?
So we'll plan to leave appropriations.
Leave appropriations where they are.
Where they are. Okay.
Okay.
But at the organizational meeting, we will set pay rates to be $20 an hour pending the results of this study.
Okay. And that, I mean, whatever the rate is, there still is time to, you know, decide what the right amount is, just as an FYI.
I guess we're all kind of shaking our heads. Is everybody in agreement with that?
That's fair.
Right?
It's okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Now, we have 2 full-time positions. 2 full-time positions proposed.
Yes. Is that, now, before we go any further, do we think that's a, is that a,
Gotta come closer. You're just not close enough.
He's got his own and he can't speak.
What can I say?
is that, do we think we need to go into an executive session for that? We're not talking about a certain person, we're talking about a position. What do you guys feel is the right thing to do?
I think at this time, my feelings were that we don't put any new positions in. Both the positions we're looking at going full-time have only been here for about a year or less.
Which
Well,
one's it?
Dave's assistant
Right,
was one,
right.
and they want to combine the part-time person in the assessor's office with the part-time person in the building's office.
They want it to be a full-time position, but split 20 hours between each department.
And at this point, if we're going to go through and do all the studies, or job descriptions and pay rates and everything, I just don't think adding 2 full-time positions is good at this time.
So again, we could,
How many hours a week is the part-time split working?
well, it's 20 hours in each department, wouldn't it?
No, how many is she working now?
Well, she's working 20 hours, I don't know if she's doing anything. 2?
2 hours a day in the assessor's office.
So
Okay.
10 hours a week.
10 hours. You're splitting half and half right
Come on up, John.
I didn't know, I don't see her up there, but I see where she's working.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the group. I'm the assessor, John Bonanno.
Got to keep it real close, John.
You like that?
That's it.
Okay. I usually don't have a problem talking, so I apologize. Part of the issue with that position we're looking to upgrade from 10 hours to 20 hours is that I'm looking to retire from the assessor's job after 9 years here. I'm reaching those golden age years, and looking to go from the assessor to the assistant, or on a contract basis. So it would behoove us, for succession planning purposes, to bring somebody up the learning curve. And Laura's been my assistant for the last 2 years, and we're looking to try to get somebody into a position for a few more hours. Also, the interaction between Bill's department and ours, I mean, we cross over in so many different areas. And more we find ourselves using some of Bill's material and people, and it goes back and forth. So having a person that works full-time, but at the same time, you know, half in Bill's and half in ours, makes a lot of sense. It's a very economic move. And also, I was listening to some of the conversation that was going on, and I read the paper a lot, and there's all kinds of issues out here now trying to find people to work in any jobs. Restaurants are closing, governments are having a hard time finding people. One of the incentives that government offers, being a 31-year state employee, is the benefits. So by bringing the position as a full-time position, it's an incentive to that person to stay with the town. And once you develop institutional knowledge in a person, to have them leave, it hurts. We had a data collector that was doing very well. I had great hopes for her, and the county stole her away. But because it was a full-time position, and she went from a part-time to a full-time. So I'm just saying, we're investing a lot of time and energy in developing our staff. I think that the person that we're looking at, I think Billy would agree, that she has a lot of potential, and it just makes good sense for the town to do that. And I'm a very frugal person. If you look at my budget for the years that I've been here, it hasn't really gone up that much for the 9 years that I've been here. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Dave.
Just to add to that point,
Hang on, Bill. people on the phone who can't, especially the phone. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to add to that, Patty Nealon, Patty Kniff that we have now, she has added a level of service to the building department for helping us with planning and zoning, and she also helps out, fulfills some needs for, like Tina answering the phones. She's learning the SBL things. We're working good together with the assessors department, and I think we're generating, we're getting in a groove where they're working with our municity and the town services. At least I haven't had too many complaints in the building department, but with working with the assessor, I think she only enhances a full-time person that could jump between the two, and we're pretty much attached at the hip, the two departments, and we work together. Our paperwork goes to them, their paperwork comes to us, we get information from them, and having a person that's key, that knows the operation inside and out, it's just going to benefit the residents and the services to the residents of the town.
Thank you, Bill.
Yep.
Again, this brings to question having this professional come in and define our positions. In the assessor's office, this position would be,
Part-time, it would be data collector or assistant data clerk,
which on our list of salaries
grade 4.
says assessment clerk.
Okay.
Okay? That position is roughly 21 and change. Now, in the building department, what would that position be?
It would be the same pay scale. It would have to be at the same pay scale.
Right, but we'd have to create a position that fit. It wouldn't be the assessment clerk.
She would be planning and zoning clerk still. She is planning and zoning clerk right now.
So so that position right now is clerk.
Clerk, that's a grade 2 position.
We don't actually have I don't believe there is a data collector on on that salary.
On this sheet, there is no
It's
data
not
collector.
defined by our salary.
That's what I'm saying.
schedule.
This would help us, having this gentleman, having this company come in and help us define our positions would help out in a situation where we have, which is actually a great idea, somebody working between two departments that actually work, closely together. But this person would be on 2 different pay scales according to our salary schedule right now. She would be an assistant assessment clerk in John's office, and then she would be just a clerk in Bill's office. So,
Obviously, in the building department, we would be paying the higher wages to keep it at a constant pay.
right, but according to the pay schedule, that person couldn't, shouldn't be getting more money because that's not her position, so we have to define the position again. So I think having that company come in and define positions is a good move all the way around.
And I just want to add I beg of you guys, I need the extra support within my department. I don't think that staffing has ever been appropriate in the department. That's been highlighted through significant accounting, budgetary, financial management type issues, and I really hope to move forward and just staff the department the way that it probably should be staffed, and try to head off future issues, because it doesn't do anyone any benefit. It hurts you guys as elected officials. If we can't produce the information that you need to make decisions, then you can't make informed financial decisions. And when you can't make informed financial decisions, you're more often than not hurting the taxpayers. So I urge, I do want to make the point known that that staffing is an issue. So just for perspective, the way that the department has been staffed from basically from 2002 to 2014 was with a full-time principal account clerk and a part-time controller. They did process payroll in-house. It appears as if they vacated their positions. As a result of an audit performed by the office that I was currently employed by. I actually speak with the supervisor of that audit on a daily basis, so I'm very familiar, very familiar with the with what had transpired and how they proposed to move on. So at that point in time, in 2014 to 2020, the office was staffed with a full-time controller and a person that was employed on a part-time basis. They worked 20 hours within the department. During that period of time, one of the primary functions within the office, the processing of payroll had been outsourced. It was brought in-house at the point at which we acquired an accounting suite in early 2019. And then it went from that arrangement to a temporary person in early 2020. We contracted with from BST. We spent about $25,000 processed payroll for 2 months. Then we employed a person on a short-time basis. I was hired in June of 2020. We hired a part-time account clerk typist in late September of 20. And I wouldn't have been able to get to where we are without that appointment. So I do appreciate that. But now that I've been in the position for as long as I have, I cannot stress how difficult it is to maintain proper functionality within the office with myself and a part-time employee. So thank you.
Yeah, my only concern is every time we add a full-time employee, you're also adding, what, 17,000 in benefits?
So,
Right? Just roughly, I'm not.
well, that's the most conservative estimate. That'd be somebody with a family.
I mean, that goes up and down depending on what benefits they choose.
It's really driven by the type of family that you have. So, with respect to her, the impact would be less than likely half of that. I'm actually moving off with the insurance plan. My wife was recently hired by CDPHP, so it's, from that perspective, it's somewhat of a wash. Not to tell my personal insurance carrier, but just as an FYI.
Don't feel bad, I gave out my phone number not over the years, so. Don't let that make you feel bad.
Okay.
But
yeah,
really,
it's
we
a
have to
point.
look at the worst scenario.
Absolute worst case scenario, yeah, I mean, you're somewhere in that range. If you employ somebody with a family, they elect to, and at that point, they don't have an option to not elect to join the retirement system. They would have to choose dental. What else?
Full-time employee gets an HSA.
Yeah, there's a 30.
That's 35.
If you had, well, if you were a family, you get the full HSA contribution, which is $3,500. That's Social Security.
Well, we pay Social Security anyway. It doesn't matter if you're part-time or full-time employee. We still have to pay our Social Security tax. So yes, that number would go up if their hours are increased, yes. So, thoughts on the controller's budget?
Well, I think some adjustments got to be made now because we got this part-time thing that
Well, we did the same thing with the court clerk, we're growing here.
I know that.
And I don't wanna, everybody's gonna say, I'll go along with Dave, but I've gotta say this, I've seen his department pick up a lot more work. I've seen him pick up, HR things and disability, and that was never over there before. The confidential secretary handled a lot of that before. So,
Yeah, that, we have kind of projects going on, we're issuing debt. I mean,
it's not just the projects, it's the everyday.
there's a lot of moving parts. I can't stress that enough.
I mean, should he really be involved in evaluating, I don't know who's going to do it if he doesn't, but evaluating the study in these positions? That's another
No, we got
job.
That'll be up to us.
Well, but he's initiating it,
Right.
so, I know we'd have to approve it and so on, but he's
Well,
doing all
we're
that
the-
background work.
I don't know, I think we've got 5 smart enough people on this board that we could write job descriptions pretty easy and duties.
Well, that's what that company does for us,
I know.
basically. I mean, I did that. I passed that information on to Dave because I spoke to the company and I listed all our positions. And that's where we got, I think, an original quote. I don't know where it went from there.
Yeah. The rate, that quote was actually calculated based on the number of positions that we employ. And I believe we have somewhere in the range of 30 different positions.
We could probably be consolidated a little bit, right?
Certainly could be.
I guess my question is, what do we want to do with these 2 full-time new positions?
I'm in favor of adding them to the town employment picture.
Yeah, I view it similar to the justice court. We go, we're growing. The staffing wasn't deemed sufficient, so they went from a 1.5 to a 2, and this is the same exact.
Just to give you a little history on that, Dave, originally they had 2 full-time positions. And then when we changed justices, the justice himself came in about the part-timer. And, it went like that for a few years until we figured out that didn't really work for us. So now we're going back to 2 full-time positions.
Well, that's what Judge Brown had said, that he's had, I think, 6 people through there
Oh, yeah.
since he's been there, so.
Yeah, so I think going to-
We train them, we pay for the training, and then they go off to, someplace else where they.
Well, I think we all know we've had that problem for more than the last, couple of years here, so I think it's a good move that we're gonna start paying our people what we think they're gonna be worth, and if there's a benefit package to them staying long-term, I think that's also a plus for the town. There's a, like you said, we're not training them and then watching them walk out the door because they know what they're doing and leaving us for greener pastures. Hopefully the grass will be green at home. Anybody else? Okay. I'm going to request that we remove the budget officer's $3,500. I think that's just not needed.
Okay.
Just for some context there, that was an appropriation that was included to keep the committee intact and compensate them for their, the services that they provide.
I think as a committee, we kind of decided that's a nice gesture, but not necessary, so.
We generally don't.
Yeah, we generally don't pay those people anyway, so. that's coming off.
The assessment.
Well, I think that's a decision we have to make in,
Okay.
at a board meeting. I believe the budget number where it is, and then we can make our decision as a board and adjust the budget. Well, it won't be, we can't adjust it accordingly, but we'll know we may be a little over budget by the time we get that decision made.
Just to that point, there's plenty of time between tonight and the 20th of November when you guys adopt this. So again, all of these figures are fluid.
Now, the preliminary budget has to be adopted next week. Is my understanding. Our budget hearing has to be the first Thursday after Election Day, and it has to be provided 4 days with notification, before the notification.
The public hearing has to be held the first Thursday after Election Day.
And the preliminary has to be available with the notification.
Right, but we can also push back the public hearing.
No,
Yes, you can. You can, where's that? The hearing may be adjourned from day to day, but not beyond November 15th. So the latest we can have the public hearing is November 15th.
you have to have the public hearing before the 5th. You can adjourn that public hearing to extend it, but you have to have that.
Right,
public
okay,
hearing.
yes, you're right. Yes, the wording is a
Yeah.
little confusing. Yes, you're correct.
Well, it's New York State, what do you expect?
I have a across-the-board question here. Other than these things, everything we've discussed on salary, are we all in agreement on the 2% raise?
Yes,
For everyone else?
yes.
Yes.
Because I had some of those things highlighted,
Yeah, some of that math is a little bit off, but yes, 2% raises for,
except for the things we've been discussing.
right.
Okay.
There may be a couple of adjustments in there's, a few departments have gone for 3%, but
3 or 4,
yeah,
Okay.
so that'll go back down to 2.
Okay, thank you.
And I understand your point, John. 5 days shall elapse between the date of the first publication of the preliminary budget and then the date specified for the public hearing. So if we need to, early next week, Monday or Tuesday night, we could schedule another workshop if we don't get through everything tonight, or if we are pleased with what we're going to do tonight, to make that a preliminary budget, Dave can work and get the numbers actually worked up, turn that into the clerk, and then we'll have time to set the public hearing. I think as long as we have a preliminary before next Thursday, we can hold a public hearing on the Thursday after. That'll be a week, correct? And the first publication of the budget is when Brendan has it, stamps it preliminary, and puts a date on it. So as long as that date is 5 days before November 4th
Well, we have to vote on it, don't we?
on the budget.
On the preliminary,
Preliminary, yes.
right, to accept it, so we're gonna have to have a meeting. Hopefully, next Wednesday's our meeting.
Well, I think there's enough business next Wednesday without that. If we'd like to, I mean, I don't know if we're going to get to the end tonight. If we don't, we can, we'll schedule another workshop for Monday or Tuesday night, and that will give us time without going into our board meeting to do that. So we'll see where we stand at the end of the night.
Clerk's office, we've already explained all that.
Yes.
Right? Clerk?
Now, some of that equipment and capital outlay is office furniture.
Yeah, so it may get adjusted, may not.
Right.
Law is just a 2%, did you? Yeah.
2% increase for Jim.
That's Jim's.
That's Jim's.
What was the 20 for personnel?
Oh, that 20,000 is, those are appropriations to be used for the evaluation of job classifications based on a quotation that was provided by council.
And I see we put in 20,000 for engineering, which was the same as last year. I know there has been some talk about maybe looking at hiring our own engineer. Personally, I don't think that's a good idea, but because an engineer, if you look at the averages around us, are $100,000 plus people. The thing, everybody says, well, look at all we paid our engineer this year. We paid MJ Design a lot of money based on the amount of work we were doing. If we had our own personal engineer, we still would have paid out a lot of money, because when you look at a capital project like we're doing, that engineer isn't going to draw your plans, he isn't going to write your specs, he isn't going to do a lot of things that we paid for.
He's going to oversee the project.
Well, do we think that's worth adding 80,000?
I think I was going to ask Dave this, to please get the numbers together, what we paid in engineering this past year. And figure out, obviously, some of the builders and so on had to pay back. But how valuable would our own engineer be to just about every department here?
So I actually think Bill may probably be the better person to ask that. I mean, I could certainly aggregate
I'd like to see the numbers.
A lot of the engineering costs that we incurred, the money is fronted by the developers, and then engineering services are provided on their behalf, and we're invoiced, and then we make our engineering firms whole. So that really the bulk of the engineering services that we I guess that we use, and the related costs that we incur. But
Let's look at somebody like Milton, who has their own engineer, and I'm not sure if he's full-time or part-time. But that may be somebody to talk to about it.
I mean, this is...
And what he actually does,
Historically, this would be something that, whereas you guys would have more perspective than I would, in that you guys actually used to employ an engineer, you would have a better idea of, how did that position benefit you guys and the tax base, and was it positive? Did it cut down on costs that we would spend in a contractual nature?
In talking with the budget committee, I don't know if with the engineer that came up, we were looking in the building department, not so much for another engineer, but for an official planner, like a town planner on a part-time basis, on a contractual basis, an hourly basis, which would save us some engineering costs by them putting their design professional, eliminating some of the costs for the town, just like we have the CT study coming up. We could utilize them to do MJ does a terrific job. As far as our departments, I have no qualms with them whatsoever. They're very professional. I've had nothing but good turnaround with them. I'm very happy with their services to the town. But an added feature that we have to look at as a town, we have a comp plan that we have to address, which the supervisor has mentioned to me. We know we have to address it. We have a CT study, which we just went through, spent taxpayer funds to look at the commercial transition zone and change the zoning.
Now, let me just correct you right there, but a lot of that was Stewart's
money, correct, I'm
so,
sorry, I'm
misspoken. That's all right.
Correct. But those things, when we're putting it all together, an official planner on a part-time basis, I think, is what I was suggesting to the budgetary committee, not so much a full-time engineer or whatever to the town, just somebody to supplement some of the work that we sent to the engineer that could be done, so that when we send it to the engineer for final approval, it and do it on a contractual basis where you don't have a full-time employee, where you're paying them hourly, you're gonna pay professional scale wages, but I think that's what multiple townships in the surrounding area are doing. They're hiring a part-time or a planner that's a consultant to the town. They help initiate a lot of the paperwork and then send it to the engineers, and it cuts the time down that the engineer spends on the project. Therefore, it cuts the money down that is expended by the townships.
And generally, it's a lower fee than we'd be paying.
I would assume yes.
Yes.
Most likely it's a lower fee than our engineering fees. But again, the town engineer that we have in our department works very well with us. We get along really well.
Just to help me a little bit, Bill,
Yeah.
as a clarification, the planner won't be able to actually look at a set of plans and study the stormwater management and all that. That's gonna have to be
There are planners that are stormwater certified, and they can take a revision in from an application for a subdivision, review them, go through, do the fine details, and then send it off to the engineer for final approval. We did this, this, and this. And it shortens the time that the engineer has to spend on it if we have a design professional in that position. And what I was envisioning in our department is like a part-time hourly base, a couple hours a week, 10 hours a week, whatever it might gauge, and just come up with a figure and try to keep it under that budget. You have the engineer to fall back on, but just to circumvent all the expenses of the engineer, but to also help us get a more efficient product to the engineer and to the applicant, back to the applicant. In fact, the board member, both John and Meg, their goal is a faster yes or no. That's what they're looking for, and that's what we're looking for, to get the applicants that are coming in a decision faster. Yes, it's going to be approved, or no, it's not. And if we have, the engineer's busy, we get busy, that paperwork might sit, and then we got that slower process. And we're trying to streamline the process so that all the applicants and residents have a better service.
Thanks, Bill. And Bill, just with had that part-time planner, is that in, correct, Mike? If I refresh me, that's in your planning and zoning budget for the year?
I believe it was put in for this year. We submitted paperwork for an applicant that we had. I don't know if it got appropriated in the original.
I don't know if the person's information got it.
It's 15,000 in zoning contractual and 15,000 in planning contractual.
That's not for the legal fees for planning and zoning. That was for the.
Well, there's another 15,000 for legal services, contractual, both zoning and planning.
Okay.
Quick question, maybe,
So-
Benny, you could help me with it, Bill. On our transitions corridor now that we're about to approve, now the next step would be getting somebody to do all the design work for that.
Yes.
Do we have that in this budget?
John, I don't think we did.
And I think that's coming.
Well, either that or we're putting it off for a year, because that's going to be a big number. That's not a cheap,
That's a big engineering cost.
right, Bill? On the transition zone, you're looking at probably 100,000?
Again, just rough estimates. I would have to say between $50,000 and $100,000 of engineering fees would have to be allocated to get elevations, certain things in that corridor. Again, I'm not a design professional. It would be something you'd have to reach out to our town engineer for, but I mean, I would have to say in that range someplace. Because you have the preliminary done, you have what the public wants, what the public wants to see with the study. Now you got to move to the next step, change the zoning. That'll be before the board, and go to the next engineering level, which again, you'd have to consult the town engineer for, further on that.
I can reach out to Joel tomorrow for an estimate perhaps, is that the right word, John, that we're looking for? To see if we want to add that back,
A budget, you're looking for a
for a
budget.
budget, to add that back in before we go,
So the preliminary,
to the preliminary?
That's not in here, correct?
Right.
20,000, so that estimate would need to be increased to whatever the, cover the cost of that estimate, plus I would leave a cushion, just
A
for,
cushion.
with, engineering costs as they come out.
I'll call Joel tomorrow.
Central administration contractual, I see we added 5,000, 6,000 to it.
Yep, that was an estimate that was prepared by our clerk. She does the ordering for supplies. A lot of that is paper. And she increased the estimate from where it was historically based on just the increased costs of paper and supplies.
Central garage, Dave. We went from 12 to 3.
So the 12 was, that was an estimate that I prepared last year, and that was to pay for the costs for us to place our highway group in a space during the winter, in that trailer that's, in front of their building. What I didn't take into account when I prepared that estimate was the cost for a septic.
Monthly pump out.
Yeah, which is
Weekly.
actually, it's significant too. But hopefully, I left a small amount in to be able to cover the rental fee for, hopefully no months, but if need be for a month and also cover the septic costs.
Under special items, we had 115 in for contingency, and I believe that's one of the things that the budget committee looked at, taking 60,000 out of.
That was an estimate. I multiplied 5% times appropriations and rounded up to the, I believe, nearest 1,000. I think what we've ascertained through the process is that there is a little bit of fluff within our budgets, and this was one of those appropriations that that we thought could be reduced.
Emergency preparedness. You had 10,000 from 5, but then you had 13 to 10, so you're really offsetting 2,000.
That's what it looks like. I don't know if Bill would like to add.
Basically, you went from 18 to 20.
Correct.
May I jump in? Bill's coming up so he can address this as well. My understanding in talking with Bill was that was the 10,000 was a request to try to prepare a reserve to be used in the future in the event of emergencies that no one currently foresees. So I thought that was the rationale.
Yes, pretty much. The original budget for the disaster preparedness when it was set forth was $20,000. We broke it down after we purchased a trailer and some equipment. We broke it down to $15,000, and we wanted to start some sort of emergency reserve for the future. With COVID, obviously, everybody knows all the PPE and the cleaning supplies and everything. 90% of that, if not more, was purchased out of the disaster preparedness budget. The cleaning stuff that we use for here, masks, PPE, we provided local fire departments and EMS with masks, and when it first happened, when they ran out, we provided the public. We did a couple public events where people handed out masks and stuff like that, and not knowing what the future brings, we want to try to beef up the budget in that disaster preparedness, we were actually looking for a larger stipend of like $25,000 to put into a reserve fund on an annual basis and have it roll over to the discretion of the town board's use in case of emergency. They could pull from it. But after talking with the comptroller and the budget meeting, there was some issues with how that reserve fund operates. I didn't really get the total particulars out of the meeting, but that was the overall goal of the disaster preparedness, to keep the operational budget at around 20 grand and then start a reserve fund that the town board could use in case of an emergency, such as town hall in the future, or another pandemic, or a tornado, or a disaster. They would have a reserve emergency fund to pull from at the discretion of the town board's doing.
Thanks, Bill.
Yep.
Can we go back
We're going to miss.
to operational plans? Go
Yep.
through that one. What are we looking at there? Let's see, personnel and so on.
So the personnel is for buildings, grounds, parks, and parks department. And it's a group of 3 full-time employees. They are seeking, and a seasonal employee. They are seeking some seasonal help for next year to, I believe, for mowing, maintaining the cemeteries, just the place, the places that we own. So this is kind of unique. This is kind of unique in that with their personnel services, you would group them together, and then we split them across the 3 places where they provide their services. So this, the 1620.1, those appropriations are for the services that they provide to maintain town hall, the
Community center and the parks.
parks. You'll see that a similar
Buildings, community center, and parks, I think.
appropriate, a personal service amount, and the same for the community center. So there's that. Our building supervisor recommended a reduction from a capital outlay standpoint, as we as the town hall has been thoroughly renovated. So there likely will be no need for any more capital equipment or outlay with respect to the building in 2022.
So does this building fall under that?
No, this equipment and capital outlay for with regards to the community service would be found as A 7989.2. There is an appropriation of $20,000 for equipment and capital outlay.
Okay.
I think $15,000 is related to the replacement of the heating and air conditioning unit, the main unit here.
That unit may also fall, the replacement of that unit may also fall under ARPA funding. When we put in a new heating or cooling system, the government is allowing that because it's more efficient, up to date, better breathing air, that's all falling under ARPA. So
You're
there's
talking
a-
about here.
Yep,
Yes.
that's a great
You're talking
point.
here. I'm just talking about general maintenance and getting this place back up to.
This goes back to capital planning. I think it would do. We haven't evaluated per se the condition of this building, but it's something that I think I would recommend that we do in 2022. And if there are concerns cited by whoever we work with to perform that service, then then it would be important to plan to do what needs to be done to keep the building.
What do you want, Jason?
Maybe
You're waving
quick.
here in the impact.
that reduction, does that take into account, I understand that town hall's been renovated, there is 50% of the actual square footage that hasn't been touched. I believe our insurance company recommended an evaluation on the other roofs, the highway garage. Does that take anything into effect there, that we're still gonna have problems there?
No.
We got about a $2,000 bill coming in right now for a garage door, that's stuff that's always comes out of that, so that, I don't know if Anthony's aware of that, and he's not here, he took that into account.
Very glad that you brought that up, you know, and if it's okay with the board, yeah, I would encourage that we include an appropriation, you know, within this tentative for, you know, for that purpose. Maybe, you know, I guess where I would recommend that we include that appropriation is in the A 1640.4, and
Central garage?
And to that point, Jason, has an evaluation of the roof been completed?
I don't believe it.
So
Yeah, I don't think that was ever done, that's why I was
we would
thinking,
need
we should
contract.
probably get ahead of that and put some money there to do this stuff, so we don't end up, and as a block building, particularly the maintenance phase, still at least a salvageable building, but we can't let that deteriorate again. And I think we need to get on that before it goes downhill.
So to Jason's comments, maybe we should include increase the A 1640 contractual line for an evaluation of that roof by a few $1,000s, you know, and include, I don't know, 20,000, 30,000 for the, you know, maybe for repairs.
Well, we had contractual for $12,000 last year.
We weren't in the building. We
That
weren't in the building.
that was for the
That was for the trailer.
trailer.
Right. Right.
And again, I think just also thinking outside of the box, again, Dave's right, the building expenses will go down, and I don't know if the board wants to, but also, you know, the exterior of town hall, other than the roof, hasn't been touched. You know, landscaping, parking lot, drainage, that sort of stuff, the fencing, all that historically would fall under the 1620 account. Anthony hasn't been here, well, he's not here tonight, I don't know if he took that into account, but he's never really worked in that building, so he doesn't have the working knowledge of that, of what's gone on there, but from my opinion, you know, we've just invested a lot of money into that building, we're gonna be staying there, something we might wanna think about, you know, doing the rest of it. Or at least coming up with a plan, evaluating it, but again, I mean, we all know, you got fencing right by we just put in $1.5 million in a building and that fencing needs to be replaced right there. That type of stuff, we should probably at least consider that.
Yeah, I can agree.
I think more importantly, we need to put money in here to do a building inventory, which will include doing the roof.
So that's an option, that's an actual.
And then we'll know exactly this building, that building, all our buildings, where we're at.
So the state, I believe it's the state education department requires the school districts to, it's called the building condition survey on a 5-year period, and you know, a company comes in and they evaluate all of the infrastructure that district owns, and they lay out line by line what needs to be done to maintain the condition of the the infrastructure that municipality owns, and they even tie, you know, estimates to those repairs or those projects, and you know, an evaluation like that could be a great tool for planning.
So where would we put that in this budget? Engineering? It's essentially.
That's a good one. It depends who we would work with. It's probably either an engineer or, yeah, I guess probably under the engineering line. But you know, into that, if we plan to place it somewhere and you know we're aware of where we place it, we most certainly can you know, reallocate those resources from an appropriation to a more proper appropriation.
The hard part's just coming up with the budget figure. What should it
cost.
would have no idea what the cost,
Well,
I could reach out to the school district.
If we're talking about looking at the buildings, can we put that under operational plant?
It certainly could go there.
I mean, as long as we know that's where we're putting it.
And, you know, to that point, you know, we just have a budgetary transfer. If we were going to expend resources to, you know, in paying an engineer, we would just move from the appropriations from the 1620 to the 1440.
Well, what, anybody can pipe in, what do you think would be a good number to add to operations and plant for a building survey?
I can't,
Go ahead.
This is one of those things where, again, I know you get from one to the other, but just out of the blue, I know Dave had probably a reasonable number, but we whacked a contingency just to whack it. That would be really your line item where you could easily say, you know, you put something in to do an engineering study and you gotta move money to fix the roof or do some fencing. That's what a contingency is really for, I mean, as opposed to going through the whole other. It probably was a reasonable number before we just said, hey, take that away, take it away. And these are the things that come up throughout the year.
I can reach out to some business managers that I know, you know, in close contact with. Basically, they would be the equivalent of myself, but, you know, in a school district and see what the, you know, costs for those types of services are.
Well, we can go back to A 1990, the contingency, and what do we think is a good number to put back? I mean, I don't want to.
Is it fair to say, Benny, we're probably going to have another night of this?
I think so.
Oh, probably, yeah.
So how about if we work on trying to get a number? I can talk to a few people and see where we can come. Dave can come up with some kind of budget figure for that.
I mean, even if it's a rough guesstimate.
Yeah, that's all you're looking, you're just looking for a budget figure.
Yep. Can you have that number by Monday or Tuesday?
Dave can, I don't know if I can, but Dave can.
I can have in 5 minutes.
Okay, Mr. Name, okay.
Yeah, I can you know, see what I can do.
Just, and I got lost as far as where we went to the community center.
We went backwards.
We were going, yeah, we were jumping all
You
over
were
the
in
place.
emergency, well, we just went back to the one, you were in emergency services, highway maintenance.
Can we go to the street lighting and are we that far?
No, we
You
weren't
got
that
that
far, we're
far
on
yet?
page 5.
I'm up to 6 already.
Go back
You
one.
skipped like one.
We're being home, yeah.
Oh, okay. Emergency services bill explained.
Microphone, Barb.
Emergency services bill explained, so I think that was
Yes.
about where we were.
Okay,
We're down to animal control.
animal
and
control,
we've gotta
that's a
make it-
decision we'll
yeah,
make
that's a decision.
Wednesday night, I hope.
We have to decide on that, okay.
The animal shelter is pretty much,
That's pretty much stationary.
That's- yeah, well, it's not stationary,
that's
but it's-
standard, that's. we
it's
got
our
that.
share from the county, so.
Yeah, right, so, public health, why did you recommend a nurse? Registered nurse, did you recommend a nurse at some point? Where did I see
Just
it?
to, so 7310 under youth program.
Somebody did.
Yep, so in hopes of getting the summer recreation program back up
Oh, okay.
and
All right.
operational,
Okay, that's over there.
we were hoping to maybe establish a few positions to get that program off the ground and, give
Okay, I saw it on yours, I'm sorry.
the Department of Health actually defines the types of, like the education and experience that requirements for certain positions for, you know, for the hosting of that program. And one of those is a nurse.
Oh, yeah, we always had an EMT.
Correct. The summer camp only needs an EMT.
I don't know, that's a,
The Department of Health defines the,
Well, they inspected it every year.
Yeah, we've gotten by with an EMT. I won't even say, not gotten by, that's the
Has
wrong
that
phrase.
changed?
It's been acceptable to use an EMT.
I can print the, there's actually a nice chart that defines,
okay.
you know, all of that. And then to that point, so these are civil service positions that are, the ones that are suggested are civil service positions that are established at the county level. So we would just basically take those positions and, you know, make them in-house positions. We need a camp director,
You're jumping way
a nurse,
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm up the street to streetlights. We went from 20,000 to 2,000.
When our lights get knocked over.
Well, that is,
We've had a lot of repair on
I
those,
know.
haven't we?
We weren't, I guess this is more like this was maybe like an accounting issue that I've rectified. If we're just going to, you know, more accurately, you know, account for those costs. And to that point, I mean, you'll see where there is a, you know, increase in the special district for providing lighting for a lighting district that has been established, and historically it appears as if, you know, maybe we weren't levying enough tax on behalf of that district to provide lighting for those residents.
I don't think we've levied any tax.
It was always about, I believe it was always $3,000. When in actual
I guess my question is, it's really not for the budget. All these lights that get knocked down, I assume are covered by insurance.
They are.
Where do we ever get that money to us to pay for the light poles?
I've never received a cash receipt of that nature.
Because those light poles are an expensive item, they're not a cheap item.
And this is a claim that we would file with Niagara for the reimbursement of.
No, it's a claim you to file with whoever knocked the poles down.
Well, I know they just replaced
Somebody.
they just replaced the trees too, so who paid for that?
That was our expense.
No, it shouldn't be our expense, it should go to the insurance
That's right,
company.
if the car knocks them down in
And they
an
called the
accident.
guy who did it. That should be an insurance claim.
Wouldn't the court have to impose the settlement? I don't know, like,
No, whoever was driving that car, their insurance should be paying for those, whatever. They take out one light, John?
One light,
light
three
there,
trees.
2 or 3 trees. We
But
should,
there's other lights
Huh?
when you go down through the town center.
yeah, well, I don't know if they caught those people.
Probably not.
I'll reach out
The first
to
one as you come into town is down.
Dave Meager and see if he has had any correspondence with those, you know, those other insurance carriers.
Yes, Bill?
I can honestly say unless when they're hit, you're knocked down, there's a police report filed. Unless you get the police report and file an insurance claim, you're not gonna get reimbursed.
Well, we should be getting something. It should be the
Correct, but
responsibility.
you gotta, if they hit it and they don't notify anybody, or nobody says, hey, where's that police report, to follow up on it, you're not gonna,
Well, somebody better get on that.
it'll probably.
And it also should be a reimbursable insurance from our insurance,
Whatever.
right?
It shouldn't be at our expense.
Well, but if you don't know who knocked it down.
Well, they do know
Well,
who
we do
knocked
know
it
who
down.
we do know who
They
got
caught
the
guy.
trees and the light
But
posts.
the other
But there should, I mean, there was an outside crew there planting trees last week. We shouldn't be paying that. Pardon me?
We would have installed those trees if the town had to pay for that.
Yeah, but there should be some type of insurance reimbursement. I think we gotta look
I
into
can certainly look
it.
at
Get
that.
hold of Dave, yeah.
Yep.
40,000 for equipment and capital outlay in parks. I know you had a list, I think, here of what they were looking for.
Yep, so, and that may have been the item where the budget committee may have proposed a reduction, but I believe what the Parks Department requested is a zero-turn lawnmower, a new sprinkler, for irrigation work, and a leaf collection machine, and not one that is similar to the size of our highway department, but just a smaller tow behind small leaf collection unit that I believe was projected around like 3,000.
On their basketball and tennis court improvements.
So, well, oh, okay, so that would be highlighted in the proposed budget, and I thought it would be more appropriate to break out our operating funds from our capital projects, or planned capital projects. So if you were, I see you page you're on, John, if you were to go back a few, one more, two more. So fiscal year 2022 summary of appropriations and revenues. It's the updated. So we have included appropriations of $195,000 to repave, restrike, add new lighting, bleachers, hoops, tennis court nets, something a project to that effect. That's what the
It's 2 basketball courts replaced, 2 tennis courts replaced, and adding the possibility of 2 to 4 pickleball courts. We've had numerous requests for pickleball courts. Apparently there's some divide between tennis players and pickleball players. The lines don't quite line up, and sometimes they get angry with each other. So
And how much is that?
we have included appropriations of $195,000. It's a rough estimate. That's a tough project to estimate. Anthony has done our building supervisor has done some legwork, and he has provided a quote, and it is,
that was way too high.
It was a material amount, and we felt that, a project could be done at an amount less than what that, that quote was.
So I've reached out to a couple of paving companies for better estimates on that, and I'm waiting to hear back from them.
Where is that, the budget
On page 2, it's the parkland improvements for 195.
So, you wouldn't actually see this elected in the tentative, well, and if it's going to be in the tentative, it's going to be in the CM fund.
Yes.
And that's the Community Development Fund. So we've had resources sitting there that have been stagnant, and we just felt that maybe this would be a good time to utilize some of those resources to enhance the parks that we have, try to give back to the community, and then the other financing source for that project was a small amount of sales tax revenue.
I guess my question, pickleball, basketball, tennis, and I've also heard people want a splash pad.
Why don't we go, why don't we go for a survey?
There you go.
Put it on our webpage.
'Cause I think that-
What improvements
and I
would you
don't
like to see in the
Like to
park?
put those other things down, but a splash pad probably is gonna benefit more people in our town because they'll be loaded in the summertime.
We have a splash pad in Greenwich, and it's it is always
Yeah.
packed with,
So is everyone in the city?
People and-
Yeah.
That's an expensive project too, it's not a cheap project.
I mean, so we can certainly, change the wording and, just say like, project but undecided.
Recreational improvements. And put a survey out on our webpage. Have
Microphone,
Brenda-
Barb.
I'll have Brenda put a survey out on our webpage and see what people want or what they prefer.
Well, I can tell you that number's gonna go up, because splash pads aren't,
They're not cheap.
not inexpensive. It's not just a concrete with a garden hose running out of it, there's plumbing and pipes and,
But that
not saying no, just put it out there.
recreation fund that the contractors have to put in,
I wasn't gonna mention that.
well, that's what
Well,
we're,
that's
But
what
that's where it
that's
should,
where
that's
it
where it
comes
should
from.
come from.
That's right.
that's what it should be.
That's
spent.
where it comes from.
That's not park
Yeah.
stuff, which we have.
It's, the money in lieu of parkland, trust. The resources within that, account, to date are, I believe at 270,000. I don't think, we haven't utilized any of those resources since at least 2017. I believe that may have been the last time that we expended anything from the funds.
I'm getting tired, I'm getting silly.
Here, I thought you were silly all the time.
No, I'm not. Have we received from Fair Oaks, have we received everything we're supposed to receive from
No.
Fair Oaks?
No.
No, not yet.
Because those
I know they
fees,
gave
I
an
think are
extension.
paid, the 2,000 per lot, are paid either with the CO or the building permit.
Okay,
I believe it's a CO, isn't it, Bill? It's a CO. So that'll come in
Yeah.
and drip
well,
and
there's quite a bit coming into that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
Plus you have other development timeline, you have the Rollins Street subdivision starting this week. So that'll be coming online. Other projects to do.
So it is great that fund is, that there's a revenue source that is derived from, development in the community. But I would also encourage that we, that we, plan to maybe always, push some resources, through the budget development process into that fund, to be able to give back to the community. What that amount is, that's up to you guys.
so we have Fair Oaks and we have whatever they call the one on Middle Line.
We got the
We
one
got
over here on
Greenfield
Hutchins.
Avenue.
Greenfield Avenue, you got Rollins Street coming up, and you got
50
Hutchins.
units there.
Which one?
Hutchins Road, it's 51 units, that's
Oh,
gonna be
yeah, okay,
$102,000.
yep. Rollins Street.
It's every lot, Bill, every lot that you do, right?
And it sounds like Stone Church Road.
It's every certificate, it's every CO, so even
Yeah.
an apartment building with 5 units in it is $10,000.
Okay, next. Where are you, Joe?
Well, I'm all the way up to
Page.
10. When I look at all the rest of these things, most of the amounts are in line with what you did last year. I mean, there's not much to look at. We put in for a increase for the planning and zoning boards.
Both in personnel services and contractually. And there was a proposition from the current attorney that you guys as a board will need to evaluate and determine what the right rate for that service is. And then also included in the contractual line was the inclusion of 15,000 in each contractual line, one for planning, one 15 for planning, 15 for zoning, and those amounts were to pay for the consultants that Bill has recommended.
Is the increase for the attorney's fees in this?
Yes.
Just to
Bill, you want to come up?
The current planning and zoning attorney, Milton Kennery, he stepped in, a unique situation, he stepped in midstream after our former planning and zoning person left. Is it working or no?
You can't be real close.
Yep, after the former planning and zoning attorney left, he stepped in midstream. They had a verbal contract to operate on the same fees that he was getting for that year, and I don't think it ever got addressed due to COVID. He is looking to increase his budget. I actually called around to other communities to see what they're getting for planning and zoning. His increase was, I think, if I'm wrong, Dave, what was the increase per month? Like 17?
Over 1,100.
It was at $1,100 or $1,200 a month increase, and that's what local municipalities, the total with the increase is what Malta, Ballston, Half Moon, right in that range, what they're paying for a planning and zoning attorney. And again, he's another, and you can also refer to the planning and zoning chairs. He is an asset to the town. He's helped us with Article 78. When Article 78 it was at additional cost, but he's very professional. He's a spot-on attorney, and well worth the additional funds if we set aside.
Yeah, did you talk to other towns about planning and zoning member stipends?
I have not.
Okay. I know Milton pays nothing.
Half was Malton.
And other towns pay if there's a meeting. So, I know it's been a long time, but it's still.
Yeah, it is a minimal increase. I agree with John on that. On the other hand, Barb, these people do,
John didn't say a word, I just
he was
saw
not,
him shaking his
he
head.
was shaking his head, so
Shaking my head what?
Okay.
that's
You want
fine.
me to say a word?
No,
No. We don't want to hear you anymore.
They do put in a lot of hours.
they put in a lot of hours,
Especially-
and
I know that,
they
I
do
know
a
that.
lot of the
Projects
groundwork.
But, I mean, we did all this research on other things.
They do a lot, I know, but
And
They-
there was
they
a
do
time
a
when
lot of
there was
groundwork.
a time when we didn't do it. We didn't get anything.
there
I
was.
agree with that. But also having gone before in our work, planning and zoning boards, Judy and I have gone before, you really hate to go to a planning board, and when it hits 11 o'clock, if you're still on the docket, we'll see you next month. Oh. Our planning boards really go above and beyond.
I didn't say anything, I just questioned it.
Why don't you give me a little?
Well, I'm okay with the increases for planning and zoning. Just going on record there, if anybody else wants to pipe in, because we have to keep moving here.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
So I understand it, Dave, now that we're to the revenue side of this. Our plan was to take, when I added up, we came up to 941 that we're getting in revenue estimates.
What page are you on?
8.
Okay.
8.
Page 8.
Correct.
Oh, I've been.
941, 518.
Yep, that was the.
That didn't include our tax levy?
That does not include the tax levy. We're solving for the tax levy on page 2.
Well, my question was, and I may be wrong at doing this, but if I looked at what we had for 2021, the 816,
Okay.
and I plugged that in with this 941, that leaves us about, well, I shouldn't even say because we've adjusted this so much, 655 that we got to come up with.
Okay.
And I guess where are we coming up with those funds?
So it's called appropriating fund balance and reserve fund balance. Our appropriations, they actually they were kind of skewed upward to that 2.78 figure within the general fund. The reason that is because we have to recognize an interfund transfer to transfer money out of a restricted fund, out of general restricted fund balance to the capital projects fund to be able to complete the fuel island station replacement and relocation project. So that is, so on page 2, it's a direct dollar for dollar amount appropriated to finance the cost of that project originally.
Yeah.
With the exception of $50, which I was hopeful that we could recognize from interest.
Do you think,
I understand page 2, 1021, but
Okay.
do you think the 300,000, I don't think is gonna be enough for the fuel island. I know, Benny, you had a budget figure.
So the 300,000 came directly from quote provided by MJ.
How old was it?
I believe it was in August.
So it was a few months back. I mean, we're not talking years
I
ago.
guess my question is, it isn't just a matter of the fuel island. The reason the fuel island and the storage building were together was we have to have an area where we can run computer terminal to in order to get the readouts from the fuel island. The electric's got to be run over there. We have to put it in a panel. We just don't have, you know. So I don't necessarily know if that's going to be enough.
Let's be safe and appropriate 400. So basically you increase the interfund transfer within the A, so that's the A.
I guess my question is probably to you, Benny. There isn't a reason we can't do both of those projects at the same time.
Oh, I'd love to get them both done next year. That'd be fantastic.
So if we appropriated the 600,
We have 660,000 resources within that capital reserve.
and we also have 100,000 in a grant.
Yep. We have 100 in the SAM grant.
You have, the state financing.
So that basically will give us 700.
760, and to my knowledge, I believe the quote that Jason received was for about $1 million in aggregate for the two.
Yeah, and you will find there's gonna be a cost savings to try to accomplish the two together, or pretty close, because otherwise, if you do the fuel island first, like it's been proposed, you're going to have to build an additional building to house the equipment and power to function. Whereas if you can do the two together, you can basically house all of the computers, the software, power, and then just trench your line for the pumps. Not that I think but there's no real reason to build another building, which some municipalities have over the fuel islands or around the fuel islands, but you'd have to have heat. It's gonna be I would, just throwing out a crazy number, you're probably adding another $100,000 to the fuel island, really for no reason, if you don't do the two projects together.
What I would recommend is that we just, look to see how much, fund balance that we have, and, I don't see any reason that we can't appropriate more fund balance to finance the differential. I mean, we're in a really, really good fiscal position within our general fund, and I think we could, at this time, I believe that, we could finance that differential with open resources. And again, no impact to the tax base.
So instead of the 300, we probably should change that to the 6.
We would change that, well, so that would be changed to about 660, and that would be the appropriation, or the amount that we would appropriate from the reserve, and then the 320 is an amount that we would appropriate from fund balance. So that figure would increase from 299.5 in the original. I increased it to 375 to pay for the furniture proposal. But it would basically increase from 300,000 to 1 million.
And then we will deplete the reserve funds for the blue building, cold storage building, and the fuel island.
The Yep.
That fund will be.
And that, so so there's two types of capital reserves. That one is specifically created only for that, it can only, the amounts that have been restricted within that reserve can only be used for the replacement of the fuel island and replacement and relocation of the fuel island and the same for the blue building. If we want to, once that's depleted, there certainly is, we could certainly work to create a future, maybe more broad capital reserve for capital, future capital needs relating to infrastructure.
What we want to do is deplete that to zero.
Technically, you have,
Because
that's all that you can use
it's
it
too
for.
restricted.
Exactly. If you don't use the resources and you complete the projects for which the reserve was originally created, then the board does have the ability to push those resources back to the operating fund.
But we specifically put money away for those two projects,
Exactly.
so we don't have any problem using all that money for those two projects.
My other question, I hate to keep bringing all this stuff up, but we have appropriated no money in here to remove the old fuel islands.
So I was just gonna ask, what do you do?
I was thinking,
That
that
could be quite
is
costly.
probably a
What
significant
are you talking
cost.
about?
The old fuel island.
Yeah,
there's-
what do you do with the
the
blue building?
Placement of that and also
Blue building is,
exactly, we gotta tear it down.
that's a heck of a lot cheaper than we could run into with that fuel island.
Oh, yeah.
Because that can run into environmental problems.
Maybe that's a project that we could rely on, internal resources, to help assist with,
There's a process DEC has us,
Yeah.
that we have to follow. You're gonna need an engineer to help close that down. It's gonna have to be put out of service, and it's gonna take a lot of work.
And you have to dispose of the tanks. I mean, it isn't,
Oh, yeah.
it's a pretty difficult matter.
Are we planning on leaving the blue building,
No.
or taking it down, or waiting for it to fall down?
That won't take much longer. I would remove the building, it's unsafe. It really is.
Okay, all right.
You don't need it up on some church, do you? Put your tractor in?
We get good money tractor to put it in.
Yeah, there you go.
They'll have enough room.
Are we at a stopping point? Is your
We can do
Zoom-
that.
Is your Zoom only 2 hours?
No, Zoom goes till 11, but that's up to you guys.
We're gonna meet again Monday, Jenny.
Everybody check your calendars, see what's on Monday night.
Monday works good.
Frank, you okay with Monday night?
I believe so.
All right.
Okay. Is that good for you?
Monday's not a great day for me. It's Tuesday night.
Tuesday?
It's a work day for you?
It's not a good,
Monday's not a good night for him.
board. I don't know if I would be available on Monday.
I won't be
I apologize.
available any day.
You won't be available when?
I'll be available any
Yeah.
Tuesday? Let's try Tuesday then.
day. Ryan,
I can make it work.
is
Thank
it
you.
better if we start earlier for anybody?
I was thinking more about the public than ourselves, but what time do we want to start? 6?
6 wouldn't, to me.
I don't want to start much earlier than that because we want to give people a chance to get home from work or
Gonna go to dinner?
tune in. Yeah, I'll buy pizza. Food and chilies.
As long as you don't put fish on it.
That's Andrew.
No, Tuesday.
Tuesday night, 6 o'clock?
And Ryan, you're the one.
I could do that.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Right, so are we at a decent stopping point? Everybody's highlight or mark where you are and,
So, yep, we're basically to the A. So it does, this probably is a good point to stop. The only other, adjustment, the proposal that the budget committee provided was an increase in,
hang on, Frank, watch it.
We just missed.
increase in the mortgage tax revenue from 400 to 425,000.
Yeah, the one thing that makes me a little nervous is our sales tax estimate for next year, where we really made out good this year.
What's gonna happen?
Yeah, I mean, when you got bare shelves and no cars, nobody's buying it.
No, that's why the county was very conservative with their,
I think you were pretty conservative anyways with that estimate, so.
Originally, with the 3.5, the county is so you're at within the proposal that the budget committee provided, we had since even increased the estimate that was included in the original tentative, up by 300,000 to about 3.8, and that's based on a projection that was provided from the county treasurer on Wednesday. They estimate that we will receive about 3.8 next year.
Sounds good.
okay. With that, we will adjourn for the evening and we will convene next Tuesday evening at 6 p.m.
I'll go back.
Thank you, everyone.
Wait a minute, Frank.
Okay.